Good morning. My name is Terry, and I'm here at the Alexander Hamilton Memorial Free Library with your next edition of Oddities, Authors and Stories. We want to thank Jessica for doing all the research, Miss Jessica Brown, here at the library. Thank you. And today we're going to be talking a bit about Oscar Wilde, guilty of indecency. In the present day, all 50 states in the U.S. have legalized same-sex marriage. As mentioned briefly in our first oddity story about Anne Perry, there was a time when homosexuality was considered not just a mental illness, but a criminal offense. This is the story of Oscar Wilde's trial for what was considered at the time gross indecency. Most readers are familiar with Wilde's novel, The Portrait of Dorian Gray, or his plays, The Importance of Being Earnest and Salome. He was already considered a bit of an oddball with how he dressed, keeping his hair long, and how he generally lived his life, despite being married and having 2 children. But what the public didn't know yet was that he had an affair with a man, Lord Alfred Douglas. Douglas was not only a poet, but 16 years younger than Wilde. While their relationship had their ups and downs, they got along pretty well. Wilde even gave Lord Alfred the nickname Boycie in his letters. This outraged Douglas's father, the Marquis of Queensberry, who wished to expose Wilde. He started subtly with a little card he dropped off at the porter desk at the Albemarle Club, which read, "For Oscar Wilde, posing sodomite." Then the muckraking ensued. Wilde's friends, who knew of the relationship and of his other vices, pleaded with him to flee to France, where he would be safe, as France had decriminalized homosexuality during the French Revolution, until the scandal blew over. But he refused and chose to sue the Marquis of Queensberry for defamation. The defense lawyer spent a lot of time accusing Wilde of soliciting 12 other young men and interrogated him about implied homoerotic undertones in his portrait of Dorian Gray, and how he used those undertones to seduce Lord Alfred. After 3 days, Wilde's lawyer withdrew the lawsuit, which in the eyes of the defense was an admission of guilt. They immediately filed charges against Wilde for gross indecency. Friends once again pleaded with him to flee to France, but again he refused. On April 6, 1895, he was arrested for gross indecency. At his trial, he was asked about a phrase from one of Lord Alfred's poems talking about the love that dare not speak its name, believing it was referring to their relationship. Wilde spoke eloquently and saw the phrase to mean nothing unnatural about it. It is intellectual, and it repeatedly exists between an older and a younger man. When the older man has intellect and the younger man has all the joy, hope and glamour of life before him. That it should be so, the world does not understand. The world mocks at it, and sometimes puts one in a pillory for it. This declaration turned out to be more negative for Wilde as the public turned against him once again. The first trial ended with a hung jury and a new trial was declared. Finally, the jury reached a verdict. On May 25, 1895, he was found guilty and sentenced to 2 years of hard labor. The hard labor consisted mainly of collecting oakum, which is used to seal gaps in shipbuilding, as well as untwisting recycled ropes to obtain the fibers used in making them. His time in prison worsened his health, and he spent the last 3 years of his life in exile in France. He soon died at the age of 46 from meningitis, November 30th, 1900. To make matters worse, Lord Alfred mostly kept his distance from Wilde during the trial and after Wilde's death. He even renounced their relationship and referred to his once former lover as the greatest force of evil that has ever appeared in Europe during the last 350 years. Now, that may be due to the fact that he was humiliated by the public over this affair. Oscar Wilde's grave in Paris is visited by thousands every year. Visitors kiss the tombstone, leaving lipstick marks across the grave. And when I say lipstick marks, There are lipstick marks all over this, and it's not a small tombstone. So if you get a chance, you should look that up. It is something else. In 2011, the graveyard had to put up a glass barrier around it as the oils from the lipstick made the tombstone porous and therefore vulnerable to decay. The Irish Office of Public Works considers Wilde's tombstone an Irish monument and has paid for said barrier as well as for the cleaning of the stone. Wilde has also posthumously been pardoned under the Allen Turing Law in 2017. Turing was the man who helped crack Nazi Germany's Enigma code during World War II. He was also shamed by his home country for the same crime Oscar Wilde was convicted of. And listeners, please remember that these stories that we give you are just facts that we find during the research process. They are not in any way the views of the library or the staff at the library. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Oddities, Authors, and Stories about Oscar Wilde. And next month on the first Wednesday, we'll have a next installment. We hope you enjoy these. If you do, please click like. You can check us out Facebook, YouTube, and stop by the library and see us. Have a wonderful day.